Alright, let's continue. It happened during a minor spate? I know the word spat, but whatever. It would make sense to be spat. It happened during a minor spat of civil war that broke out several years before World War III. Having built a reputation in the darker corners of society, Shiki had at times been employed by the government to undertake certain clandestine operations. Yeah, like killing Rin's group, right? His records were falsified. No common soldier knew his true identity. One night, in the early hours before dawn, Shiki was on his way back to camp after performing reconnaissance on the enemy base. That's where he meant Nano. Glimpses of red firelight flickered between the thickly clustered trees. When Shiki returned, the camp was already in flames. Oh, far. He could see nothing but smoke, hear nothing but the dying smell, nothing but blood. Hear nothing but the dying and smell nothing but blood. Okay. Different intonation. The flames painted the night in vivid hues of red and black. Uniformed corpses lay piled on the ground like copies of the same doll carelessly cast aside. So were they laid there in a uniform fashion, or were they cast aside? That's different, no? But Shiki had long been accustomed to death, and so he was neither shocked nor appalled. The only element of this that surprised him was that an enemy unit had managed to take the camp so effectively unawares. As far as he could tell from the gory aftermath, the soldiers here had hardly put up a fight. Where could the enemy forces have come from? The security had been virtually airtight. Well, obviously it wasn't. A gentle breeze brushed away the burnt stink of smoke, and as the haze began to clear, he saw people standing here and there amidst the dead. There were 6 of them, wearing black combat uniforms. They weren't anyone Shiki recognized. This would seem to suggest that the 6 of them had destroyed the entire camp, defeating many times their number. He'd never heard of such a formidable unit. Was this their first deployment? Ooh, is this Nano? With short hair? As Shiki studied the shadowy figures, he found his eyes drawn to one man in particular. He was positioned in the middle and wore a different uniform than the others. He was standing atop a heap of corpses, his back to Shiki. It was more than just the uniform that had drawn Shiki's eye. Something about him was entirely incongruous with the setting. The man appeared utterly at ease. His arms hung limp at his sides. There was not a trace of tension in his body. No soldier, however many battles he'd faced, could ever be so relaxed, so unguarded. Yet from behind, this man appeared defenseless, as if he'd crumble the moment he was attacked. He showed no sign of battle fever, no thirst for violence. Now that Shiki had studied them more closely, the other 5 were much the same. They looked as lost and purposeless as ghosts. That is so fucking weird. Had they truly wiped out the whole camp by themselves? The visual evidence would seem to speak for itself, but Shiki couldn't help but doubt his eyes. Eventually, his gaze shifted back to the man. He jerked, startled. The man was looking at him. Oh my god. This kind of veiny shit happens when you take rain. His eyes were every bit as lifeless as his body. Flame-cast shadows danced upon the side of his face. Shiki was dozens of meters away, deep in the underbrush, motionless. He should have been undetectable. And yet the man was looking straight at him, with eyes empty of all but darkness. Yikes, that's so fucking creepy. His pulse raised. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't even look away. The man's eyes had pinned him in place. His thoughts, ordinarily so clear and ordered, had flown into wild disarray. Darkness crept over his vision and invaded his body, his brain. Then Shiki realized what was happening to him, why he trembled. He was terrified! For the first time in his life, he was afraid. The emptiness in this man's eyes, it looked like madness. Before he knew what he was doing, Shiki drew his knife and charged the man. Really? He didn't care what might happen to him. The only thing he wanted was to erase the source of his fear. The other soldiers met his charge. Their strength far exceeded anything he had encountered before. It was a struggle to cut through them, but he persevered, driven by an impulse he could barely comprehend. He didn't understand much from these moments. Time stretched and contracted, the world blurred and flowed. So wait, did he kill everyone else in the unit, except for Nano? His entire being was focused on him, the man who seemed carved from oblivion itself. Knife poised for the kill, Shiki leapt. Good question. Shiki's eyes were every bit as sharp as his knife had been that day. Ooh.
お前の中に生まれた恐怖
What?
味わい
What the what? Yeah, seriously. Huh? I don't understand. Nano gave a slow blink. His blue eyes shone purple.
絶対的な己の力が突き崩された時に生まれる恐怖そしてその衝動あの時お前の瞳の中に
I don't understand that notion at all.
お前が憎悪しているのは俺だけではない俺から生まれるものすべてを憎み恐れている
Okay.
強くあればあるほど
He held out his hand.
倒れた時の衝撃は甚大だ
Will he ever stop talking? Jesus. He held out his hand. For a moment, the outline of his body stood out in stark relief, a sharp contrast to his usual nebulous aura. A trace of shadow passed through his empty eyes, and he curled his hand into a loose fist.
恐怖が心に救う鍵どれほどの殺意と憎悪をもってしても打ち勝つことはできない決して俺勝て
I can't say I entirely understand what is going on. Can anyone explain, please? He spoke flatly, emphasizing only the last few words, which fell like stones into a lake. There was no hint of emotion in his voice. And yet, Akira thought that he sensed pity. Pity? What? Wait, excuse me. I'm sorry, I'm a dumbass, but like... Huh? As long as fear haunts your heart, you will never overcome me. No matter how violent your hatred might be, you will never defeat me. And he was like, and he's savoring this. I wanted to savor your fear. So he's obviously enjoying being the center of Shiki's being. And Akira's like, sounds like pity. Okay. I guess. But for whom? Ah, Shiki? Or perhaps himself? Shiki's blade cut a fierce arc through the air, as though to say that he had no words left. His fury had consumed them all. The rain hammered down, thick sheets of black water that seemed to shut out the world around them. Akira could no longer feel its chill touch on his skin. Shiki leaned forward, preparing to attack. Nano let his arm drop back to his side. The tension like thin ice hung in the air. The first to succumb to emotion would fall, and right now Shiki was drowning in rage. Oh, well, fuck. It was clear who had the upper hand. But what difference did it make? It meant nothing to Akira which man survived. He was a bystander, nothing more. This was not his fight. Yeah. But in that case, what was this feeling that smoldered at the base of his skull? Shiki would die. He was certain of that. Shiki had savaged Akira's flesh. Wow. And nearly broken his will. If he fell to another, if he was not the absolute tyrant he seemed, then what did that make Akira? A bystander. He found himself gripping Shiki's arm. Shiki shoved him away with fearsome strength. This was his personal Armageddon. He wouldn't let anyone interfere. At least use my blood. Come on, man. Suddenly, someone grabbed Akira from behind. Ew! You guys are still here. He turned his head to see Kiriwa smirking down at him. Gunji and Abitra stood nearby.
なるほど。あの男にもそういった過去の傷跡があったとはな。意外だった。
Great that you're so fascinated, but like, leave me alone, please.
お前暴れるとどっか潰しちまうかもな。
Keep touching me and I might have to spit on you.
混ざってもいいあそこ。
Sorry. Gunji jerked his head at Nano and Shiki. His smile was that of an innocent child, eager to play. Yeah, join them and die. A calculating light gleamed in the masked man's eyes.
これで型がつけば
誰にも介入されない単独でのビジネスを展開することができる。そしてどちらが勝つかは
Yeah, it makes sense for him to not want
火を
Shiki
見る
around
よりも
anymore.
明らかだ。
Yikes. Okay, yeah, I gotta save my man, alright? Despair heavy in his chest, Akira turned to face the battle.
ちれや
Shiki attacked with a hoarse cry, launching himself at Nano like a bullet. The distance between them vanished in a breath, and his sword flashed like lightning in the darkness. Fueled by rage, Shiki's speed and power were greater than ever before. For an instant, it seemed that he would reach his mark, and then Nano's body blurred. Without any visible effort, Nano had evaded Shiki's blow. To Akira, the movement had appeared leisurely, as if he had known years in advance how Shiki would attack. Wow, I don't even want to know how he sees the world now. Next to Akira, Abitra smirked. Shiki reversed his blade and flowed into his second attack without a millisecond of delay. Fearsome skill, but this, too, Nano evaded, shifting away from the sword's silvery arc as though he were a leaf blown on the wind. Shiki couldn't touch him.
これが戦闘兵器の力。あの指揮をもってしても傷一つつけられないとは素晴らしいな。
I wouldn't use the word subarashi. I don't know. A living weapon. Akira could see it now. Though Nano's movements were quick, he still wore no expression. He watched Shiki with empty eyes, like the muzzle of a gun trained on its target. It was eerie, yet Akira saw more than just emptiness. He saw a bottomless well of despair, as if Nano had given up on the world itself. Is Nano also a target? I don't think there's an ending, like a Steam achievement for him, if I remember correctly. Is he like also, is there a route for him? Because it seems like it, the way Akira is just describing him passionately. His heart was closed, eyes sunken in darkness. That was why he could kill without emotion. He'd spent years imprisoned inside a laboratory, deprived of every freedom and dignity. While not fully, Akira felt that he could understand his sorrow.
お前は
Shiki growled in a low voice, though his onslaught never paused for a second. Nano remained as elusive as a ghost.
お前の目的は何だ
Good question. His blade flashed white, parting the rain.
お前は何をするつもりだった答えろ
Yeah, I still don't understand that either. Water splashed from his feet as he lunged forward.
この俺の答えなど
Is it?
明白だ
I kind of thought that Nano might be like out for his own death by using Akira's blood. That's what I kind of was thinking, but now I'm not sure. Nano replied, dodging Shiki's rising slash. His sudden bangs covered his eyes, hiding the look on his face.
愚かなる魂よ無に帰すた
What does that mean?
思い上がるな
Yeah, I don't think ignorance is ever possible to completely destroy, unless he's out to destroy humanity as a whole. Shiki dropped low and swept his blade through a powerful arc. Nano leapt back to avoid the strike, then halted a short distance away. He stood still, his breathing steady, his pallid coloring muted further by the rain. Shiki, in contrast, was breathing with his shoulders, his body seeming to glow with malice. They were polar opposites, yet the rain unleashed its silent fury on them both.
この世にはあらゆる思い上がりから形成された愚の産物が溢れている
Yeah, it's called humanity. There was nothing new in his voice now, a thin, taut thread of steel. He couldn't see Nano's expression, but something about those words made him shudder.
命自然文明生み出す力は素晴らしい
Yeah, so?
人は弱い生き物だ牙も爪も身を守る術を何も持たない
Your point being?
やがて眼下に見下ろすものができれば今度は全てを手中に収めようという幻想に
I mean, yeah, but that's not all there is to it, no?
だからこそ力がいる何にも頼らぬ絶対的な己の力が
Interesting
それこそ
takeaway.
が過ちだ一人の暴走が構想を生む多くの
Oh my god, can you like pick up the speech He's so slow in his talking.
目先の欲に見入られた者は行く末の闇には
Are they truly unaware or do they just not care?
そうして破滅と再生を繰り返すの人の歴史
Yeah. But also that's not all there is to it.
高みへと登ると
Speaking of
期待
ignorance.
と高揚何にも代えがたい甘美
Okay.
確かに俺は今その紅葉の中にいるのかもしれんな。
Okay. Shiki's low murmur was tinged with euphoria. Akira looked at Shiki's face, and what he saw there gave him pause. One instant he thought he'd seen a smile on Shiki's lips, though that same fierce, murderous flame still blazed bright in his eyes. Shiki was enjoying this. The struggle was what he wanted, more than anything else.
永遠に繰り返される破滅と再生俺は
You know what? If you have no desire to watch, how about you just, close your eyes? Why are you making your own reservations everyone else's problem, you know? You are the exact problem that you hate, you know? You know better. There was a quiet gravity in Nano's voice.
だ醜く愚かにもがけば最後の炎は輝きを
Is he talking about us? About Akira?
俺はそれが見たい
Ooh.
破滅の瞬間そうと知りながら己の欲望に手を汚し醜く争い
Okay, so he's not completely empty, I guess?
すべて予定調和
Okay. Well,
結局は貴様の欲のために俺を利用した
oh, yeah.
ということだろう。
Shiki shook the rein from his blade and pointed it straight at Nano. Of course he was. I mean, sorry, but duh.
それが思い上がりだと言っている。神にでもなったつもりか。
Yeah, it seems like it.
俺一人が動いたところで何かが変わるわけではない
That's not true, though. You are changing stuff, you know? You are
些細な出
actively
来事に
pushing for the end of what you want. You just said everything is according to plan. So obviously you are doing shit. You're not just witnessing or whatever. You're contradicting yourself.
最後は確かめた
Slowly, he placed his hand upon his chest.
何を確かめる。
Destruction. Rather than reply to Shiki's question, Nano removed his hand from his chest and ran his fingers through his wet bangs, pushing the hair away from his face. His pale lips wore a taunting smile, an expression unlike anything Akira had seen before. The fire in Shiki's eyes flared brighter, brighter than the absent sun. Okay, can we just leave? And then Nano began to laugh. It started as a low rumble, but quickly grew into a manic cackle.
気でも触れたか
You just know asking this? Of course he fucking has! I'm sorry, but obviously! Arbitra seemed every bit as shocked as Akira, while the executioner simply grunted. But I love Arbitra's face just now. It looked so disgusted. Nano's laughter peeled through the rain, rising to to be swallowed by the sky.
やめろ。
Nano appeared to ignore Shiki's command, but at last his laughter began to die down, and his lips curved back into a mocking smile.
お前は本当に愚かだ俺に勝てなどしないの何度も挑んではその度に敗れそれでもま
I
だ
simply like to dance.
いい加減に学んだら
Oh,
どう
wow, that's a mean face.
お前は俺には勝てない永遠になぜかわかるかお前が今まで味わったことがなく
What?
勝つ恐れている
Power?
感覚
Like what?
俺はよく知っているからだ
Nano's voice was thick with scorn. It was as though someone else had taken over his body.
弱さを知らずして本当の強さを手に入れることなどできないもしお前が少しでも感じたことがあるのなら
Go back to your
俺はそ
fucking
の数
Twitter
千倍もの
forums.
攻め苦を味わい続けている想像もできないだろうなだから俺は強い強くいられる
Oh my god. Oh my god. It has the same energy of, like, you know, in school, these people that were like, oh, I haven't slept well last night. Oh, well, I haven't slept well the last 3 nights. I haven't slept for an entire week. You know what I mean? It's like these weird, like, who is worse off kind of conversations. What the fuck? Just, oh, fucking hell. Yeah, seriously. Shiki was on the verge of throwing himself at his enemy. He was on the verge of throwing a fit. Seeing this, Nano strode forward, unguarded, as though daring Shiki to attack him. Oh my god, just please, shut up. I can't take this. His tone abruptly softening, Nano smiled and extended his left hand.
それでもなお強くあることができるか
どういう意味だ
お前が憎んでやまないこの体を流れる血人にまやかしの力を与えるこの血こそがお前の弱さの象徴だ
What do you mean a symbol of his weakness? Nano rolled up his sleeve, exposing the lily white skin. He raised his arm to his mouth and bit down ever so gently, his eyes never leaving Shiki. Blue veins trailed just below the surface.
ラインはこの血を何十倍にも薄めたもの常人が純度の高い原液を摂取すれば発狂した死に至るだ
Ew.
それだけではないこの血を受け入れるという所作そのもの
No! How about fuck off? He's not going to take it, alright? He still...
乗り越えることができる
Ew. What is this obsession with licking up blood? Also, if Shiki does this, I'm going to be so fucking mad. Also, the amount of times that he's licked up Akira's blood, like, I wouldn't, you know, I really wouldn't. This is like asking Shiki to come and kill himself. Yeah, thank you.
誰が貴様の血など
乗り越えることができるかと
I don't care what you've asked.
お前が真の強さを望むのな
It's not his greatest weakness. Sucks for you to be, you know, sucks for you to be addicted to, well, not addicted to something, more like sick with a virus or whatever. Sucks for you. But why would Shiki infect himself? That doesn't make sense. Shiki is plenty powerful on his own already. The only one he can't defeat is you, and you are the freak in this situation, okay? Here, Shiki fell silent. Don't you dare! The enemy he had pursued for so long was now offering a devil's bargain. Akira could hardly begin to imagine the conflict that must be raging inside him. Perhaps it was true that no one could be strong without first understanding what it meant to be weak. But no, that was a different matter. Akira's instincts warned him that what Nano offered was something else entirely. If Shiki let himself be goaded into accepting, there would be no turning back. I will cut off your arm. Nano extended his hand toward Shiki again. His rain-slick lips seemed to listen enticingly. Don't you fucking dare! Oh my god, so he did kill Rin. Oh my god. Oh my god, he didn't. Maybe he's talking about his father or something, you know? Maybe it's not Rin. Shiki's head was bowed, the air around him humming with a quiet intensity. His sword slipped from his fingers. Don't you dare, Shiki! It struck the ground with a noise that seemed thunderous to Akira's ears. Akira stared at the scene before him, transfixed. He'd forgotten the executioners entirely. Akira, fucking move! Get him to stop! Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. This is so fucking dumb. Dashing forward, Shiki closed the distance and seized Nano by the shoulders. His red eyes glittered darkly, shot through with unadulterated madness. As Nano allowed Shiki to grab him, a smile spread across his mouth and his lips formed silent words. A fool to the end, he seemed to say. Yeah, it is insanely foolish. You're just doing exactly what he wants. Why would you do this? Stop him? Of course! Excuse me? Hang on, let me... I know a choice when I see one. But we're definitely stopping this fool.
Shiki!
Akira's voice split the air, seeming even for a moment to silence the rain. Shiki stopped dead in his tracks, as though struck by a bolt of lightning.
自分の力でそいつをねじ伏せてやる。あんたはそう言ってた。
Yeah?
弱さに取り込まれることと乗り越えることは違う。目を覚ませよ。
Yeah. Slowly, Shiki turned. It felt like ages passed. His eyes were wide, as if he'd just woken from a dream. The madness of moments ago had receded. So maybe he'd fallen into Nano's, like, suggestive stare or whatever. The moment his gaze returned to Nano, he shoved the man away from him, leapt back, and picked up his sword.
貴様。
Nice! Nano was no longer smiling. Fuck you! The man who stood there was once again a lifeless doll, as if those moments of madness had been a fever dream. He watched Shiki with vacant eyes and blinked slowly as he spoke.
Oh my.
No, I think you've lost. Though his voice was scratchy and soft, Akira heard him clearly. Shiki burst into motion, charging through the darkness like a sudden gust of wind. Drops of rain scattered on the gleaming point of his blade. Nano watched him come. Wait, so Nano let him kill him? The sword buried itself in Nano's gut. Red rivulets streamed from the wound. Nano coughed, spraying blood from his lips. The blade emerging from his back was coated with crimson, yet retained its silent, solemn gleam. As Shiki drove the sword still deeper, Nano slumped against his shoulder. His eyes closed, a tranquil smile on his lips. And that was how he died. Wow! And this is how Regina George died. Sorry, it's just the same kind of energy, you know? That was how Regina George died. Without a word, Shiki pulled his sword free. Nano's body crumpled to the ground like a puppet with no one to hold it. A red pool spread beneath him, and the rain carried its warmth away. Had Nano, at the nadir of utter despair, at last found the fire he so craved? To Akira, those last moments were when Nano's spirit had seemed to burn brightest. Huh. Okay, well, this was abrupt. Shiki stood there for some time, motionless. The sound of the rain was almost painful now. Nano, Emma, Gwen, 3 tragic corpses lay exposed to the storm's fury, slain by the merciless whims of fate. No, slain by this guy. But after an eternity, Shiki finally shook the blood from his sword, then turned his head to look at Akira. Akira's immediate reaction was to freeze. Shiki's eyes were empty. He could see no trace of the harsh light that had always gleamed there. Those eyes, darker than night, were fixed on him. Excuse me? One hand covering his mouth, Abitro approached Nano's corpse. Kiriwa followed, dragging Akira along with him at first, but this time Akira found it surprisingly easy to shake the larger man's grip. Meanwhile, Abitro touched the side of Nano's neck, feeling for his pulse, then let out a sigh. Yeah. Grimacing with an exaggerated revulsion, he took a small metal case out of his white suit pocket. Bottling up whatever blood he can still gather? Yeah. Anger surged at the base of Akira's skull. Abitro cast an annoyed glance over his shoulder as he opened the case and withdrew a syringe. Akira, how about you bleed all over his corpse so that the virus dies and he doesn't get any of it anymore? What do you mean? Of course he does. Oh, he really feels for him. Akira's chest tightened to see Nano's soft expression. He almost appeared to be sleeping. At the very least, he deserved to rest in peace. Abitro's cheek twitched. My God, this face. You do realize that Shiki is on my side? His silver streak flashed by his mask, and Arbitro ended his sentence with a squeak. Ah! Shiki's sword was poised at his throat.
され
Ah! His voice was a low, dry growl.
あなたまでそんな
Yeah, well, I'm his bitch, so...
聞こえなかったが
Arbitro let out a wail of terror as the sword bit into his skin.
お前たち何をしている主の命が危険にさらされているんだぞどうにかしないか
I mean, it's Shiki we're talking about. The executioners were standing a short distance away. For some reason, they looked bored. Their usual leering grins had vanished, and they showed no signs of malice.
お前たち
Tasukite? But like, why wouldn't they help him?
つまんねえべ
What? Kiriwa and Gunji exchanged glances, then turned to look at Shiki.
そいつもう中身が空っぽだろ
In Shiki?
こんなわら人形みたいなスカスカとやったって面白くも
What? What the fuck are you talking about?
No.
Yeah.
何を言っている
I'm also confused. What? Akira took a closer look at Shiki. He had a feeling he knew what the executioners meant. At first glance, Shiki appeared unchanged. But no, something was missing. Lost. His towering confidence had retreated into the shadows, and even his silhouette seemed dimmer than usual, as if he might melt into the darkness and vanish.
持っていろ
What? After passing his sword to Akira, Shiki lifted Nano's body in his arms. His head was bowed, wet hair plastered across his face. He looked like a phantom risen from the grave, every bit as lifeless as the corpse he held. Turning his back on Arbitro, who knelt deflated, abandoned by everyone. Ha! Akira followed Shiki from the lot. Okay. They come to the edge of Toshima proper, where Shiki laid Nano on a broad, flat rock surrounded by withered trees. Pride Rock? Its shape reminded Akira of a coffin. After taking his sword back, Shiki lowered his gaze and stood silent before the corpse. Akira thought that perhaps this was Shiki's way of mourning him. He felt he understood the reason for Shiki's haunting silence. Shiki had desired absolute strength. Nano, who had known his weakness, had been both his enemy and his goal. Nano's existence was what had enabled Shiki to forge ahead, no matter the cost. Yet now that Nano was gone, what next? Oh my god, I'm at this exact point in my life currently. That moment when you achieve your goal, and it's always very, very sudden that you achieve something. It's just like, what the fuck do I do now, you know? Most people, upon achieving their goals, find new goals, make new plans. But Shiki wasn't most people. For him, this had been the grail, the only thing of value. He would not have considered what came after. He had driven himself too hard and too fast to take away his purpose now, before he could find another reason to go on. It was easy to imagine how despair and loss could overwhelm any sense of achievement. Yeah, I'm at exactly this current moment in my current life. Akira recalled Nano's last words. You've lost. Maybe so, but at least Shiki had seen his path to the end.
行くぞ
Already? Shiki said shortly, raising his head, then began to walk off without looking back. Aren't we going to bury him?
どこへ
Good question.
この町を出る
Shiki's answer surprised him.
出るってどうやって
北の路地にあるビルの地下から下水道に入れるそこから日光連へ繋がっているはずだ
Is it the same path we took with I always want to say Momichi. What's his name? Frick. With reporter guy. Is it the same one?
下水道だいぶ前に廃止されたんじゃなかったのか
He'd heard that they were demolished before the war as part of the plan to reconstruct underground shelters.
ほとんどはそうだが全てをくまなく潰して回るほど国も暇じゃないだろう
How do you know
中に
that?
は手つかずで放置されたものも
Also, I love... He's so beautiful. Seriously.
安全なのか
As safe as anything.
だが身の安全に関して言うなら
Yeah.
どこにいても同じことだ
He had a point. It was only a matter of time before the tension between the CFC and Nikorin escalated into open conflict. And then, nowhere would be safe. It was still raining, and the sky remained thick with dark clouds, but dawn was fast approaching. They made their way north, winding through streets that seemed to hum with a faint undercurrent of energy. As they came to a residential district, they turned right, entering a straight, narrow alley. At first glance, it appeared to lead to a dead end, but when Shiki reached for the wall and pulled, a rectangular door revealed itself. The door swung open with a metallic squeal of hinges that had lain unused for years. When he followed Shiki through and pulled it shut behind him, he found himself in total darkness. It is the same room!
はぐれるなよ。
Okay. I feel like we saved Shiki somehow. I feel like now that his one goal is gone and he's extracting himself from this whole Viscio operation or whatever, I feel like he can really start anew. Shiki suddenly grabbed his arm. It startled him, but he let Shiki pull him along. It seemed that he knew the way. The room smelled of mold and dust, and there was a humidity in the air that clung to Akira's skin. His face impacted something solid. Shiki had come to a stop without warning. He sensed Shiki feeling around for something. This was followed by a quiet click, and all of a sudden his eyes were blinded by light. I hope there's not, an intimate scene in this room, because this room is forever the Rin room. I'm sorry, I'm so biased. Squinting against the brightness, he looked up to see Shiki's face lit by a dangling light bulb. Perhaps it was only the shadows, but he seemed weary. Akira took in the room. The room was larger than he'd expected. A large set of steel shelves stood in one corner of the room, just ahead. Shiki had taken up position in front of it. He placed both hands on the shelf and gave it a shake, as though to test its weight, then started to push it out of the way. The noise it made grated on Akira's ears.
棚なんか動かしてどうするつもりだ
To barricade the door?
この下に下水道へ通じる入り口があるはずだ。
Akira stepped up and looked over his shoulder. Sure enough, a round steel lid was embedded in the floor where the shelf had been. How does he know all this? It was equipped with two protruding handles, which Shiki now grabbed hold of. The lid came away with a ponderous groan. Below was a perfectly black opening that seemed to descend forever. The faint stench that rose from it smelled like a bit like raw garbage.
ここから日
Yikes!
光連まで歩くぞ。
Oh god! As soon as he spoke, Shiki leapt into the hole without bothering to make use of the footholds. Oh my god, he's gonna come down with a splash, I'm telling you. Akira soon heard the echo of his feet hitting the ground. It wasn't nearly as deep as it looked.
早く降りてこい。
So at least it doesn't seem to be full of sewage water, I guess. Or maybe it's dried up, I don't know. Oh. He grabbed the rim. Oh, sorry, this is really actually upsetting to me, the thought. Oh! He grabbed the rim of the manhole and lowered himself in. I'm sorry, I'm very squeamish. This is not okay. Carefully descending the rungs one by one. I'm not squeamish when it comes to small animals or blood, but I'm squeamish when it comes to maggots and dirty stuff. The tunnel was pitch black, but weak light filtered down from the room above, and he could just make out the shape of the path ahead. The ground was neither slimy nor damp. The only trace of moisture in the air was a musty old smell. Okay, that's a good thing then. He had to wonder whether this passage could really take them to Nikorin. Yeah, well, I would assume so. I trust Shiki, kinda. I don't know why I do, I just do. As he stood there hesitant, Shiki grabbed his arm and started walking, pulling him along. Shiki's pace seemed awfully fast, possibly because Akira still had reservations, and he stumbled a little as he tried to keep up.
日光連までどれくらいかかる
3 days.
さあな。
この道を使ったことは
ない。
Although Shiki's terse answers didn't help Akira's anxiety, at least he seemed to know where they were going. Something about his firm stride reassured Akira. It reminded him of the confidence Shiki had exuded before the fog of emptiness had enveloped them. Akira's clothes were still wet from the rain, and the chilly air flowing through the tunnel steadily sapped what little heat he had left. Shiki's fingers, though, seemed hot enough to burn his arm. It was as if his heat was the only thing keeping Akira grounded in reality. The darkness was to blame for these thoughts, he decided. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in complete darkness like this right after a scene like this either. Oh my god, what is happening? What the fuck was that? Several minutes after they started walking, a loud boom shook the tunnel around them. Akira almost toppled over, but Shiki's arms kept him from falling. It felt as if the noise had come from overhead, rather than from inside the tunnel itself.
爆発?
Is the war starting?
そろそろか。
The war? War between the CFC and Nikorin. Those had been the opening shots. More explosions rocked the tunnel afterward, but none were as massive as the first. Even after silence had returned, it still felt to Akira was if the ground were shaking, okay? His ears had gone numb. Shiki began walking again, pulling Akira by the arm, as if nothing of consequence had happened. The tunnel was mostly straight, but now and then they came to a branch in the path. Akira soon lost track of which way they'd come, but Shiki's strides never faltered. They walked for a while in silence. From time to time they heard distant noises that could have been explosions. Akira felt like he was wandering through an endless night. As his mind drifted, a question arose. This warmth on his arm. Why was Shiki still holding him? Because you're all he has left. Shiki could have escaped Toshima more easily on his own. In the first place, they had to rescue... Why had he rescued Akira from Emma Gwen in Arbitro? He couldn't figure out what Shiki's intentions were toward him. Why go to such lengths for a mere toy?
どうして俺を連れてきたんだ?
Because he saved me. He'd meant to speak softly, but his voice resonated all too clearly in the hollow space of the tunnel.
理由などない。
Shiki didn't even stop walking as he answered, much less bother to turn around. I think there's a reason you just haven't thought about it yet.
答えろよ.
He still didn't check his step, but now he looked over his shoulder. Akira's vision, having grown accustomed to the darkness, caught a glimpse of red eyes glittering.
ならばこちらも聞きたいことがある。なぜ逃げなかった?
That is a very good question.
お前を置いていた部屋の扉に鍵はほとんどかけずに置いた。
Well, I felt that you would follow me if I did. Also, I didn't really want to leave. That was what Akira himself wanted to know, more than anything. At the time, he had certainly contemplated escape, but it had felt as though his body was no longer in his control. It submitted to Shiki regardless of his will. But now he was starting to think that perhaps his will had played a role. Of course it had! A man who followed his path no matter where it took him, who let no one and nothing stand in his way. Perhaps contrary to his fear and revulsion, Akira had been drawn to Shiki, to the purity of his indomitable will. Ridiculous. Hiding his rueful smile, Akira replied with a shake of his head.
わからない.
それでも答えろと迫ったのは誰?
Same feelings, eh? Though far from satisfied by his reply, he couldn't bring himself to press the question further. Afterwards, they walked in silence, broken only by the echo of their shoes against the concrete. The path seemed as if it would continue forever, and what if they did come to the end, only to find nothing there? Nothing was more terrifying than nothingness itself. Perhaps Nano too had been consumed by this fear. Perhaps he'd succumbed to despair because he could see nothing when he looked into his future. Oh, yikes. Akira could relate to that. His blood was cursed. Even if it was the counteragent, it shared a common origin with Rain. What did Shiki think about that? Akira's blood was fundamentally the same as the blood of Nano, his hated foe. No, it's, I feel like it's very different because, like, the blood of Nano gave him power and all that shit. Akira's blood does nothing. Like, right? It does absolutely nothing but kill the virus. It's like, it's a cure, and it does absolutely nothing else. So, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's the same.
俺の血は消さなくていいのか?
At this, Shiki stopped and turned to face him.
効果は違っても同じウイルスが流れてる.
It's not the same virus, it's different, and also the effect is basically useless if we assume that Nano's virus is gone from the world now. The silence was almost too heavy for Akira to bear. He wouldn't be surprised if Shiki chose to cut him down on the spot. And so when Shiki did respond, he was taken aback by the soft tone of his voice.
お前は俺のものだ.
Oh my god.
それ以外の
Why am I squeeing right now? Why do I think this is cute after all that's happened? My god. What? A choking lump of something he couldn't name rose inside of his chest. Shiki resumed walking. Oh my god, Shiki, please. Different to Akira's turmoil, Akira quickly moved to keep pace, though inwardly he was struggling to calm his heart.
ここを抜けたら
Yes? It was some time before Shiki spoke again.
好きなところへ行け.
I'll stay with you. Akira gaped at Shiki's back, but Shiki's demeanor seemed unchanged, and he didn't say anything to elaborate further. Did that mean Shiki was setting him free? It's like he's finally showing Akira the respect he's due. If that really was the case, it was everything Akira had hoped for. Freedom. So why did he find it just a little bit hard to breathe? And in any case, he still hadn't figured out Shiki's true intentions. Could he really leave that question unanswered? A tug on his arm pulled him out of his thoughts. Shiki had stopped.
Miro.
Far ahead, he saw a single shaft of light. It was their destination! The place to which this darkness would bring them. Akira didn't want to go anywhere near it. He didn't want it to end. Not yet. When he stopped, Shiki turned to look at him. I don't know. Shiki yanked hard at his arm, pulling him toward the light. It burned fiercely in Akira's eyes, and without mercy expanded to swallow him. Okay. So, the CFC's offensive had begun and the base was in chaos. Even so, the garrison commander saw to it that Akira and Shiki were taken safely into custody? What? No one had time to ask many questions about who they were or where they'd come from. The one issue that did arise, Akira's murder charge back home, was cleared when Emma's involvement came to light. Thanks to support from foreign powers, Nikorin managed to achieve victory in only 2 short years. Under Nikorin's leadership, Japan had taken its first steps towards a new future. By that time, however, Akira and Shiki had long since slipped out of sight. Aha! So the both of them are still together. Nice. Oh my god! Is this our new apartment? Still hideous, but oh well. It's better. It is better. It's gotten chilly. Akira murmured as he returned the katana to its sheath. Summer had given way to autumn. It still felt warm if you lingered in the sunlight, but take one step into the shadows and the cold was biting. Thick black curtains hung over every window, leaving no gaps for the sun to sneak in, and thus the room stayed as cold as it could possibly get. Even during the day, the only light in the room came from a small lamp set to the table, which cast soft shadows across Akira's face. The room was bleak, with bare concrete walls devoid of paint or paper. The only other piece of furniture was a sofa, though the door to the back room revealed a glimpse of a bed. Akira uncrossed and recrossed his legs. His form-fitting black leather pants, what? Made a rustling sound as he moved. What? Akira glanced idly at the lamp, sometimes sorry, but like, are we just brushing over that he has form-fitting leather pants on? Are you kidding me? Oh my god. Sometimes gazing into light like this summoned memories from the depths of his mind. Today it reminded him of a naked bulb, the one that hung from the ceiling of the room where they'd found that entrance to Toshima's sewers. 2 years had passed since then. Shortly after the war had ended, Akira and Shiki had chosen to quietly vanish. It had been too risky to live out in the open. Although Akira had been cleared of the charges against him, Shiki remained a wanted man. And the law had been the least of their troubles. As Vizkyo collapsed and Tokyo was bombed into rubble, they began to receive unwelcome visitors. Those with designs on Shiki's life? The reputation he had built in Toshima had made him an irresistible target. And so they started drifting from one location to the next. Right now, they were using an abandoned building on what had been the Nikorin side of the country. Akira's top priority was keeping out of sight. This area had experienced a sharp decline in population, and he rarely saw other people around. How are you getting your money then, for like groceries and stuff? But there was another reason he'd chosen this particular spot. Nearby, there was a wooded path. While the scenery there was not exactly unique, Akira enjoyed the subtle beauty of the forest, and most of all, the peace and quiet. On the rare days he deemed it safe to relax, he would take Shiki for a walk outside. It was truly beautiful now that autumn had arrived. With the ground covered in red and yellow, it was like walking upon a rich, vibrant carpet. I'm just seeing those two fucking Shadow the Hedgehog clones, like walking in fucking leather outfits, full on leather outfits, expecting no one to notice them and no one to think anything of them. Like imagine seeing a pretty boy, and not just one, but 2 of them, 2 pretty boys, clad entirely in leather. Like, you cannot tell me that you would not remember them. You know, it would still be in your mind. Like, what did I just see? Is it just the German in me? Is it like we notice everything? It's just so, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's weird, but it's like it's unique enough to notice, is what I'm trying to say, right? These walks offered a brief respite from endless days of flight, battle, and fear. It would soon be evening. Yesterday and the day before had passed without incident. In the beginning, there had seemed no end to their pursuers, but as months went by and the memory of Shiki's glory faded, the attacks had slowly dwindled. That didn't mean he could afford to let down his guard, but another outing couldn't hurt. The sun was setting. This was when the carpet of leaves would be at its most beautiful. He picked up his sword and rose from the bare metal chair where he'd been sitting, then went to the next room to call Shiki. He opened the door a crack and peeked in. The lights were off and the room was pitch black.
Shiki.
Oh my god, he said it so cutely. He called out softly. There was no reaction. He could just make out a shadow in the corner of the room, seated with its back to him. The shadow faced the windows, which were covered by thick curtains, just like those in the room Akira had come from. He stepped inside and walked up to Shiki. The chair's silver handles were cold to the touch. He adjusted his grip, as though making sure that everything was where it should be. Shiki's head was slumped forward, so Akira stooped to speak softly into his ear. He pushed, and the chair rolled forward with a creak. With the sun setting, the temperature outside was no different from inside, cold but tolerable. They went down a small street in front of the building, then ascended a gently sloping road to reach the scenic path. There were no other people on the road, which was scarcely wide enough to let a single car pass, and trees festooned with scarlet and gold stood lined up neatly on either side. Against the brilliant orange of sunset and the darkening blue of night, Akira watched the autumn leaves dance. The sight filled him with an indescribable emotion. He murmured, sighing deeply as he pushed the wheelchair along. Why is Shiki in a wheelchair? I had a bad feeling when they were like focusing on this fucking metal chair. Why is Shiki in a wheelchair? What the fuck happened? Shiki's head hung low, his empty eyes staring at the ground, but this too was burnished with red and gold, and so Akira was certain that this feeling hummed in Shiki's heart as well. So is Shiki like catatonic? You've lost. Nano's last words, as time passed, their meaning had gradually become apparent. From that day, Shiki had never drawn his sword again. Though light still lingered in his eyes for a time, this had faded noticeably with each passing day, until he had become a ghost just barely tethered to this mortal plane. Akira had tried everything to bring him back, all in vain. Even when surrounded by enemies, he had made no move to resist, so Akira had been forced to draw his sword and fight in his place. Shiki's once confident crimson eyes were now hidden behind dark shadows. His clear, strong voice was nowhere to be heard. His cold, perfect features had become those of a doll. Oh god, that's so sad. The Shiki who had lain claim to him no longer existed. That man had died with Nano in the rain. Nevertheless, on the day they'd escaped to Nikoran, Akira had made his choice. He would stay by Shiki's side. Even now, he could not say how Shiki had truly felt about him. What had been the nature of their relationship, the strange bond that had tied them together? He doubted he would ever understand. All the same, Shiki had rescued him from Gwen and Emma. Shiki had told him who he was, that he remained Akira, no more, no less, despite the tainted blood in his veins. That was why Akira had chosen to stay, to be as near as he could to the core of who Shiki was. He might have lost his former radiance, but Shiki, the man, still drew breath. A red leaf drifted down from above, tracing a languid circle as it fell to land in Shiki's hair. Akira stopped, plucked the leaf free, and held it up where Shiki could see it. Oh my... Oh my god! Oh my god! I can't! What? Also, Akira, this outfit is really not you. You know, you can't just steal Shiki's entire look. You can't. I'm sorry. It doesn't suit you at all. But also, like, look at Shiki's soft features. Oh my god. What? Shiki did not so much as twitch. His eyes remained blank, unfocused. It was always like this, but Akira felt no despair. They were together, and that was what mattered. He's even holding his hand down there. It looks really awkwardly drawn, but like, it's still, you know? Oh my god. He placed the red leaf in Shiki's lap atop his limp hands and started forward again. Dry leaves whirled in the breeze like cherry blossoms as they made their leisurely progress along the carpeted ground. If only this moment would last forever. How he wished that the season would carry them away to a gentle world of vibrant beauty where there was no past, no future, no break. A tremor shook him. There were people nearby. They were trying to keep their presence hidden, but the chill wind brought him their malice. Rather than make any sudden moves, he kept his eyes closed and honed his senses to see what he could learn. 2 sets of footsteps approaching from the woods. Akira's body was relaxed, his heartbeat steady. He could handle 2 easily enough. Although they struggled to remain calm, he could tell that his opponents were quite worked up, licking their chops in anticipation, certain that their prey would be caught unaware. The rustling of fallen leaves underfoot. They were close enough now for him to feel their bloodlust like needles against his skin. With a roar, they leapt. Akira's eyes snapped open. In a single smooth motion, he grabbed his sword and drew it from its sheath. How to stand, how to fight, these things had come to him naturally in the process of defending Shiki. Like Shiki before him, Akira had become cold and hard, mercilessly cutting down all in his path. Sword raised, he spun. His black coat fluttered, summoning a whirlwind of leaves. He's just taken all over Shiki's entire persona? What? This is so weird, isn't it? And the meticulously sharpened silver-white blade loosed a spray of vibrant scarlet, a color to rival the red of autumn and the crimson of Shiki's eyes. Oh my god, the music. Oh my god, what is happening? What? That's it? I'm so confused. What? What was that? What was that? Why did he take over Shiki's entire persona, like his entire outfit and stuff? What? I'm so confused. And what happened to Shiki? My god, what a weird route. I'm so weirded out and confused. Like, I have no idea what to think about all of this. I wonder what ending this was. If this was like, I think there's 3 endings, 3 Shiki endings. I wonder which one it was, because like it left a lot open that I would have liked to know, you know? So that was the Shiki route. Let's see from the Steam achievement which ending this was. It was Shiki end number 1. Okay, it was the first Shiki ending. So it was the wheelchair ending. That's what I'm gonna call it now. Wow, the catatonic Shiki ending. You know what? Before I'm going to make a statement about all of this, I'm going to play the other 2 endings, and then I'll have a better opinion, hopefully. Because right now I'm just fucking confused. So I will see you in the next episode. If you have any idea, or if you understood this better than I did, please let me know, because I'm just shocked and confused. That is what I'm feeling. Shocked, confused, and also bemused, because just Akira and Shiki's close. I mean, come on, bro. I don't know why it's so funny to me. It just is. Whatever. Let me just say this. You know, I've been thinking about this when I edited this just now, right? The fact that Akira followed Shiki in the first place was weird to me, right? But now that he's catatonic, I was always also like, why the fuck would he stay, right? Because think about it. The only thing between Akira and Shiki was the fucked up shit that Shiki did to Akira. And the only reason I could conceivably think why Akira would stay with him was that Akira kind of liked it and it was like, okay, you know what, I'm staying for the sex, you know? Can't really, well, you know, teach their own is what I'm trying to say here. So if that's what he's doing, that's what he's doing, I suppose, right? But there's no sex to be had anymore, right? There's nothing to Shiki anymore. He's not even there. He's not answering. He's not seeing anything. He's catatonic. And usually, you know, if you love someone, of course you look after them, but it's an insane job. It's something, it's like, it's something you can't do for just anyone. It's like your entire life you would dedicate to taking care of the sick person, right? Why would Akira do that for someone he doesn't even know, right? Shiki asked him what his name was shortly before he deteriorated, right? Like, they have absolutely no relationship. You cannot tell me that this was enough for Akira to be like, yeah, I'll give you everything. Because what Akira said, the reason why he followed Shiki, he said before that it was because he saved him from Gwen and Emma. And Shiki also said, like, well, you are who you are regardless of your blood. That's all that Akira referenced. And that is all it took. That is all it took for Akira to be like, yeah, all right, you're my dude. I will give my entire life to look after you, your catatonic ass. After everything you did to me, that's fine. I'll forgive all of it because you said I'm me. And you saved me that one time. Are you kidding me? But, like, Akira's love comes fucking cheap, and it really bothered me when I edited this that I didn't point that out, that I didn't really see it. I was too dumbfounded by whatever was happening on screen at the time. Like, the way I spoke everything, like, softly, like, oh my god, I can't believe it. Oh my god, poor Shiki, or whatever, right? No! He's an asshole! He's a fucking asshole. What kind of state of mind was I in when I recorded this last year? Like, what the fuck was wrong with me? What the fuck is wrong with Akira? The clothes have tainted him. Also, who are those attackers and why did they attack Shiki, and why is Akira saving Shiki from them, and why is Akira suddenly strong enough to just protect him from everything? So many questions. Entire route can be summed up with what the fuck. Those are my closing thoughts on this ending. We'll see. Maybe I can. I'm coming to my senses in the other two endings. I'm not gonna hold my breath, but you know, editing me is always here for the job. I will see you in the next episode. Get something amazing to drink. Treat yourself. Have an awesome day. Thank you for being here with me, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Bye, guys.